Readers Entertainment Radio presents Booklights with your host, author Lisa Kessler. Booklights, where we're shining a light on good books.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to Booklights. You are in for such a treat today. I can't wait for you to meet Aurelio Voltaire. He has a brand new book out called Gothic Life, Essential Guide to Macabre Style. And if you have never heard his music or seen him in concert or seen him in an animated feature or read his books, I'll read his bio here so you can get to know him. Born in Havana and raised in New Jersey, Aurelio Voltaire's boyhood fascination with horror movies blossomed into a teenage taste for moody music of British rock bands, including Sushi and the Banshees and The Cure. Aurelio worked for years in stop motion animation, a career that led to gigs with MTV, Nickelodeon, and Sci-Fi, and to becoming an instructor in the School of Visual Arts from 1996 to 2019. As a musician, he is a songwriter whose music can best be described as a collection of murder ballads and tongue-in-cheek exercises in the macabre. And with spooky season right around the corner, guys, if you don't have a Voltaire playlist, you need to change that right away. So many fun Halloween songs there. He is also the author of books Paint It Black, A Guide to Gothic Homemaking, and What is Goth? Music, Makeup, Attitude, Apparel, Dance, and General Skullduggery. He also wrote a really adorable children's book, which I happen to have, called The Legend of Candy Claus. So be sure you hunt that down. He lives in the East Village in New York and regularly streams his YouTube show, Gothic Homemaking, which you should also check out because it's so much fun and there's lots of episodes there to binge. You can find out more at his website. I did put the website right there on the Blog Talk site. So if you're listening live or listening later, you can check that out and find out when he's coming to your town. So without any further delay, you there, Voltaire?
I am. Hello, how are you?
Hello, I'm great. I'm eagerly getting ready to have my first summerween soiree. I'm loving your book. So can you tell everybody what was the inspiration to write Gothic Life, Essential Guide to Macabre Style?
Well, I live in a tiny New York City apartment. Once you're, how do I put this? I moved in here out of necessity, probably a bit over 20 years ago, at a time when I didn't have a lot of money, and this was the best that I could find. But it's rent stabilized, and most New Yorkers will tell you, New York, where space is at a premium, will tell you that when you have a rent stabilized apartment, you never leave there,
No, you can never move.
Just a few short years later, you find that you're paying, half of what your friends are paying for the same amount of space. Mm-hmm. So I had to get really comfortable in here. And I decided that I really wanted to turn this place into a home that I wanted to come home to, a place that I'd want to entertain in. And, it's one tiny little room in a studio apartment. So it's a little bit challenging. So I decided the first time around, many, many years when I first moved in here, I did this process where I transformed my apartment into a Gothic lair, and I captured it all in a book called Paint It Black, A Guide to Gothic Homemaking, which was released in the early 2000s by a publisher called Wiser Books. Well, many years went by, and we all grow up and our tastes change, and sometimes you just look around and you say, oh, I really hate where I'm living and I've got to do something about this place. So I decided that I wanted to gut this place and start all over again. And for half a minute, I thought, well, maybe I'll make another book. But then I naively thought to myself, oh, it would be so much easier just to, film myself working on my apartment.
So much easier.
Oh my gosh. I don't know what possessed me to think that that would be easier, but I started a program on YouTube in 2016 or 17 called Gothic Homemaking. And it was basically just a way to document the process of transforming my tiny little home into like the world's smallest Dracula's castle.
Nice.
And when we embark on things like this, sometimes we have a goal. My goal was to to improve my apartment. And I thought that if I did it as a web series, there would be people tuning in and I would be forced to continue working on it.
Little peer pressure.
A little bit of pressure is always good. And, somewhere in the back of my mind, I also thought that Gothic homemaking could be a television show. And, I think I pursued that for a little while, but years and years and years later, I had just gotten so down the rabbit hole of Gothic homemaking that I think I forgot why I started doing it. And once I passed the 100 episode threshold,
Wow.
the New York Times did a story about me in the show, and they referred to me as the Martha Stewart for macabre homemakers. And then suddenly there was all this interest in Gothic homemaking. I mean, I'm not going to name any names, but there were certain channels who said, "Hey, this would be a great TV show." I'm like, "You don't,
Hey,
you know."
you manifested it.
And so, amongst some of the really cool things that happened immediately after the New York Times article was that I was approached by Quarto Books to write a Gothic homemaking book. And truth be told, for those who watch Gothic homemaking, if you notice that there's not a lot of episodes last year, it's because I poured everything I had into this book. And I think I created somewhere between 3 to 4 years worth of Gothic homemaking content just for this one book. And it came out today. Now, I don't know when this
Yes.
is airing. I don't know when this is airing, but we are recording this on August 20th, and that
Yes, exciting.
the release of the book. So the book has come out today. It is really, really beautiful. It has surpassed all my expectations and like the quality of the printing and the quality of the cover. And hopefully, if you pick up the book, you'll find that the content's not so bad either.
Well, I was going to ask you about what can people expect? What are your favorite parts of the book?
Well, I'll tell you that I tried to approach it from the perspective of it being good for someone who is just getting into goth. So, I think that the popularity of the Wednesday Netflix series has really,
Yes.
fired up the imagination of a lot of younger people and introduced them to this lifestyle. And I took that into consideration. So I really didn't want it to I didn't want it to be um off-putting. I didn't want it to have any gatekeeping of any sort. So it is an extremely welcoming book, and
Oh, nice.
it's a book that basically says if this is something that you're interested in, you should go for it. It's a book where I say there are no mistakes, because unfortunately there are people in the community who will tell you like you're doing it wrong. That's not good, And I'm very much of the belief that, the Gothic aesthetic has grown and changed and morphed so much over the decades. And the reason for that is because of individuals, because of people coming into the scene and saying, well, why can't it be a little bit more sci-fi? Well, why can't it
Right.
be more Victorian? Well, why can't it be a little bit more, avant-garde? And all these different people add their own viewpoints. So I really, really wanted to make sure while writing this book that it was welcoming to everyone who might, find an interest in macabre homemaking. And I wanted to make sure that the projects ranged from someone who has never picked up a glue stick to someone who's a pro,
Right.
So there's a lot of different dark DIY projects in there. There's a lot of cocktail recipes and a lot of spooky food recipes. And I really, really made sure that there was something for everyone in there. So, whether it's your very first time doing a DIY project or whether this is something that you do frequently, there'll be something in there at your comfort level.
I love that. And what are some of your favorite DIYs that you have put like in your lair that made it into the book? What made the cut?
Well, as I talk to you, on this recording, my laptop is sitting on a table that I call the Haunted Library End Table. It is still my favorite DIY project of all of the DIY projects I created for Gothic homemaking, and that is why it is one of the only, pre-existing projects that made it into the book because it is one of my favorites. But it's like the four skulls of my enemies holding up a column of blood-soaked books upon which rests a Ouija board, a framed Ouija board.
Ooh,
And
nice.
there's more than one of these here at the Lair of Voltaire. So when people come over, they get to sit in a throne and they get a haunted library end table placed in front of them. So they have their very own private table. And I think it's one of the most beautiful pieces of furniture that I created for the show. But on top of that, I think that it's probably my favorite because I had so much trouble with it and I was so certain I would never be able to complete that project. So
So you defeated it, you conquered.
there's a certain sense of satisfaction, to knowing that you have an idea in your head and it might be just beyond your skill level. And
Right.
and there were so many disasters in the making of this project, but somehow I made it through the end, and now I have this really cool piece of furniture. So that's one of the more complicated projects in the book. One of the simplest projects, which I shared, I think, way back in my book Painted Black as well. And it's the very first project in episode number 1 of Gothic Homemaking. And there's a reason. And that is because this is the easiest thing that a human being can do to begin to transform their normal apartment or their normal home into a Gothic lair. And that is the wine bottle candelabra. And it is
Ooh.
such a simple project, but it is so effective. What you do is you get yourself a bottle of wine. Now, my favorite part of this project, of course, is emptying the bottle of wine, but that's neither here nor there. Then you can remove the label if you want to, but it's not necessary. You paint the entire bottle black with black spray paint.
Oh, okay.
And then you can either put a really cool spooky sticker on there, or like I do, I will create my own labels in Photoshop and print them out, and I'll put those on the bottles. And then you simply attach a white candle to the top and you set it ablaze, and you have something that looks like it might be sitting on a table in Dracula's castle. But the best
Oh,
part of
nice.
all is if you make 5 or 6 of these and glue them all together, cover them in white candles. After a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you will just have this insane cascade of dripping wax all over these bottles. And it really, really starts to look like something you might find in a medieval castle. And
Ah,
it's just such a great entry level project because anybody can do it. It costs a few bucks to do it, and it makes all the difference in the world.
yeah. Oh my gosh, that sounds so fun. So people could go give that a whirl like right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, after they finish listening to the whole episode, then wine.
One would hope. One would hope.
Well, I
But they could be
mentioned,
they could be
huh?
emptying the bottle while they hear us chat.
True, true. There we go. Project already underway. Um,
Exactly.
well, I mentioned in your bio that you also are a very talented musician, and I believe this week you're heading off to Poland for some concerts, right?
That is correct. I perform practically every weekend of the year. And
Wow.
so this weekend happens to be shows in Poland. I have a show in Warsaw, a show in Poznan, and a show in Gdansk. Gda, Gd- Gdansk. That's a tough one.
That
And
is. Wow.
then I come back from that and immediately go to Dragon Con in Atlanta. This will be my 20 consecutive year headlining at
Wow.
Dragon Con. I'm sorry, 25th consecutive year headlining at Dragon Con. It's an amazing convention. 80,000 people come out, and absolutely everybody's in a costume. So you're just surrounded by stormtroopers and elves and orcs and Vulcans, and it really is like nerd Mardi Gras. It's just a
Yes.
fantastic time. I play every weekend of the year, and uh, it's funny. I only recently, in the last year or two, realized that I make Halloween music. Because up until now, I just assumed that, like, songs about zombie prostitutes and cannibal buffets were like everyday affairs. But I noticed on Spotify a year or two ago that my numbers, like my listeners, double the month of October. And so it goes from like I don't know, 100,000 or 150,000, like up to somewhere around 300,000. And a lot of artists might be really offended if they knew that half their audience doesn't even think about them until Halloween. But I couldn't be more delighted to be associated with my favorite holiday. So I just think it's fantastic. But yeah, if
Yeah.
you're looking for some fun, spooky songs to add to your Halloween playlist, check out The Skeleton Dance or Raised by Bats, which I hear all the time at Spirit Halloween these days. When I'm walking through a Spirit Halloween, I'll hear some of my songs like Raised by Bats or a song that I wrote for a show on Cartoon Network called The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. That song's called Brains, another one called Land of the Dead. So yeah, I'm your Halloween go-to guy. So add me on the streaming platforms.
Yeah, for sure. And, way back in the day when I was trying to get my first book published, I write darker paranormals. And in the MySpace days, your song Evil
Oh,
was my
unreal, yeah.
song. So when people opened up my MySpace page, there it was.
Well, yeah, it's good that people know exactly what they're getting themselves into.
Right, right. I'm all for it. Yeah. So I was going to ask you, I should have asked you this earlier, but if you're in this tiny apartment that you are making into your macabre lair, how often do you change it up? Like, do you swap things out? How often do you freshen up?
That is a really great question. And the answer to that is it is a process of attrition. So I am really not so much the kind of person who changes the decor of this place like once a year. Seasonally, obviously, there are things that are going to happen. And you'll see that in the book Gothic Life, The Essential Guide to Macabre Style, that when Halloween rolls around, the place takes on a bit more of a Halloweeny flavor with more oranges, more orange colors,
Right. Orange
more
and purple.
yeah, orange and fall colors. You'll see the occasional villain colors, purple and green might pop up and things like that. And then when Christmas rolls around, this place really does kind of turn into like a creepy Christmas wonderland, if you
Love
will.
it.
So we start bringing out more white, more silver, more red, but still decorating in a macabre style. But the overall design of the lair, like I said, is mostly it is an organism. So it is constantly but slowly, kind of like a forest, it's constantly but slowly growing and
Hmm.
change over time where, someone knocks over a candelabra
Whoops.
or someone breaks a mirror. And then the next thing you know, we're replacing that spot with something new. Or, of course, as I'm constantly making DIY projects, there are those projects that I really want to feature in my home. And so something has got to go. And it's
Right.
funny. It's funny because a lot of the people who come to my shows, my concerts, and who watch the Gothic Homemaking Show, they'll want to bring me presents, which is really sweet and really, really kind. Uh, but so often I have to explain to people, you realize that if you give me something, I have to throw something else out. It, in no part of the multiverse do I have room for new stuff at the Lair of Voltaire. Like I absolutely positively have to put something into storage if I want to bring something new in here. Which is why at this point, and Lisa, you might be a little bit horrified to discover that I now have something like 2 to 3 times the amount of square footage of my apartment in storage units down the street,
Oh no.
which I've only recently realized are their own like Gothic prop shop.
Because you have all your supplies are all hidden over there.
Much stuff in there, DIY projects that I've made, and spooky furniture and spooky decor, and every other weird thing that we've like picked up in our Halloween home decor hunting videos. And when I was making the Gothic Life book, my apartment is like 10 feet by 11 feet. I thought, how am I going to make a 200-page book where you don't get bored after page two because you've already seen that wall? And I gotta tell you, having my own prop shop of Gothic decor was really helpful because every time we set up a table to show a different recipe, it's different plates, it's different
Ah,
silverware. Different glassware. I have so much stuff that I really started thinking once the book was done, like, oh, I should really open this up. It's like I mean, I don't know how much demand there is for like a Halloween and Gothic prop shop, but I think I've got it covered at this point.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So, what are the chances that someday the person next door to you will kick it and you can get their apartment and bust the wall down and double your space?
Oh, it's so funny that you said that because there was a time when the person next door decided to call it a day, and I approached the landlord, and he was just absolutely against it.
Oh, because then they can raise the rent, right?
There's all kinds of dynamics. They're mostly financial dynamics. There's a lot of
Mm.
dynamics involved, but I actually even wanted to rent, before I had all this storage space for all of my surplus, macabre goods. I approached the landlord about just renting another apartment in the building, and he refused. And it's so,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. And it's so sad, but it's like, my neighborhood is historically a poor neighborhood.
Hmm.
That's, probably changing very, very quickly via gentrification. But
Right.
when I moved to the East Village of New York City in the 80s, it was, considered, let's call it a low income, kind of sketchy and dangerous neighborhood. And
Hmm.
the landlord is still very much of the belief that if one tenant can't pay their rent, he's got a bit of a problem. If one tenant has two apartments and he can't pay his rent, he's got a
Problem
big.
doubled.
So, yeah, but look, I also live in Mexico City, and we have a much bigger place in Mexico City. And so there are opportunities to expand the lair of Voltaire.
Expand the layer.
I just have to be south of the border.
Yeah. Well, then it could have a Latin flavor goth lair.
Absolutely. It could be Dia de los Muertos all the time.
There we go. I love it. I love it. So you mentioned that you got to take pictures of some of your DIY projects. Does that mean the book has lots of photos of different things people can make or use in their
Yeah.
decor?
Yeah, I mean, it is a how-to book. So most, 99% of the book is dedicated to giving advice on how to get started if you haven't gotten started yet, like what color to paint the walls, what kind of wall treatments you can use, how to quickly transform any space into a macabre place. And so that's how the book starts out, and it almost immediately gets into DIY projects, like how to turn some regular household items into something you might find, in a vampire's lair. And then immediately there's drink recipes and there's food recipes. If you want to throw a summer ween party, there's a couple of drink recipes, a couple of food recipes, and a couple of DIY projects. And that's pretty much how the book runs. It is almost like a calendar year kind of book. When you pick up
Okay.
this book, you will be guided through, what are the different things that you could be doing to get the very most out of Summerween. And then that leads into what are all of the best things that you could be doing to get the very most out of Halloween. And
Hmm.
it continues through the year.
But you have lots of pictures in there so we can see
Oh
if we
my.
made it and if it matches
It is a
how we
coffee
did.
table book. Yeah, no, it is absolutely a coffee table book.
Oh,
And I
good.
must tell you that the photographs are unbelievable.
Ah,
An extremely talented photographer by the name of Roberto Beltran came up from Mexico City. He's a friend of mine.
wow.
He's a very, very talented photographer, very creative fellow. But on top of all of that, he handles all of like Starbucks accounts in Mexico and Latin America, and he's a professional. So everything's technically really great. And then he happens to be a macabre soul himself, so he really
Ah, good. I
gets
was
to.
going to ask, was he surprised at what he was taking pictures of?
I'll tell you what he was surprised about. He got up here and he couldn't believe he came up with his assistant Alejandra, super talented art department person, and they came up here. I warned him that my apartment was so small that it was going to be really, really difficult to shoot in here. And nobody ever really believes me till they get here and realize they can touch all four walls without getting out of a throne. Um, so he showed up, and I think what really blew him away was that he would come and he would shoot in, this dense Victorian macabre Gothic space. And then he'd go back to his hotel, at like 5 in the morning, because we did this like vampires. We'd shoot mostly from
All
midnight to
night.
5 a.m. Yeah. So I would spend from noon to midnight getting the place ready with a very, very talented fellow named Gerald Vincent, who was a art department fellow I worked with on the book. And he and I would spend, sometimes 12 hours getting things ready. And then Roberto and Alejandra would come and they'd walk in, and it would be like you're walking onto a Disney ride. It's just like
Ah,
this really dense environment where every inch of the walls is covered in something interesting. And they'd come in and they would just marvel at how dense the world was. And then at 5 a.m., they'd leave. They'd come back the next day, and it would be a completely different
totally
place.
different.
So, they would come back the next day and it would be Halloween. And we'd shoot Halloween. And then they'd come back the next day and it would be creepy Christmas.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I think they really, I believe that they think I had like a portal to another dimension where I could just shove all this stuff, and pull out everything else.
They
But
didn't see you running down the street, putting things in storage and taking other things out.
absolutely, yeah, we literally were running down the street all day long. But the book, the photographs that they took for this book are just so stupendous. It is such a visual book. It's printed on coated stock, and it has like 205 pages, hardcover, just really, really a beautiful, high quality book. I am so incredibly proud of the work that Quarto did to make this book as beautiful as it is. Because, like I could sit and write all day long.
Right.
The quality of the book is really, really impressive to me. And the photographs of Roberto Beltran really make this an art piece. This is a coffee table book in every sense of the word. It happens to be very useful in that it's
Mm-hmm.
so full of recipes and DIY projects that you'll get a lot out of the book in that sense. But you could literally just place it on your coffee table and let people leaf through it, and you're transported to this magical lair of Voltaire that is quite literally bigger on the inside. It's just it seems so much bigger than it really, really is.
I love that. Well, before we run out of time, what is next for you? I mean, we talked about Poland, but what's your next creative project that you're working on?
I'm presently on the Halloween Forever tour, and
Ooh.
I'm going out there every week of the year, and I'm performing everywhere from, Poland to Atlanta, Los Angeles, Kansas City, Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, you name it. The UK tour starts in November, so it's a whole bunch of dates in the UK. And I go out there and I play the songs that, people who know me typically know, songs like When You're Evil that you referenced.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Some of my Halloween hits like Brains and Land of the Dead from the Cartoon Network show The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy.
Oh, what
But
about the Vampire Club?
the vampire, I haven't been doing the Vampire Club on this
Ah,
tour. Yeah.
see, deep
Yeah.
cut, deep
Well,
cut.
this is what happens when you have 13 albums. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's a lot to choose from. But my most recent release is an EP of Halloween songs that include It's Always Wednesday, about our favorite Adams girl,
Oh,
and
fun.
Skeleton Dance, which is very much in the spirit of like those old Cab Calloway songs from Betty Boop cartoons of the 20s. And so I go out there and I play these, for the most part, fun, uplifting Halloween spooky songs. And that tour continues on through mid-November. Meanwhile, I am also shooting and editing episodes of Gothic Homemaking. The new season starts up in about a week or two.
Oh
And
my gosh.
I'm really, really gearing up for this to make up for last year, for this to be the season with the most number of episodes.
Wow.
I'm holding to
Okay.
it that that's my goal. And then in the midst of all of that, I have written and directed a live action horror film called The
Oh my gosh.
Demonatrix. And I shot that in Seattle a couple of months ago. Principal photography
Wow.
was finished. It stars Doug Bradley, who played Pinhead in Hellraiser. It stars
Amazing.
indie horror film legend Larry Fessenden. Our leading lady is Hannah Fearman from VHS, the original VHS. And we have a demon that is made by Norman Cabrera, who's the same guy who made all the Hellboy creatures for Guillermo del Toro.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, our demon is played by Gothic legend, skinny puppy frontman Ogre, who a lot of people know as Pavi from Repo the Genetic Opera. So it is really an incredible, has been an incredible experience to finally direct a feature film. The synopsis is a Mexican priest, played by me, steps in to help a very dear friend and neighbor, a dominatrix, who unwittingly summons an incubus demon. So it sounds like a comedy. Somehow it isn't.
It's very serious.
Unless it comes out and it's really bad, in which case I'm absolutely going to tell everybody it was intended to be a comedy.
Yes.
We are now working on editing the film, creating the music and the sound effects. There's a couple of special effects that still need to happen. And we're hoping to have it finished in the spring of 2025 so we can start doing, the horror film festival circuit.
Oh my gosh. Are you writing the music for that too?
I am not.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of people have asked that question. I've gotten comments on my social media like, I better hear some of your songs in here. And I'm like, I think I'm doing enough.
How much thinner can we spread you, Voltaire?
Exactly. I mean, I co-wrote this film and I co-directed this film with my very good friend Jeff Farrell, who's made 3 other horror films. And we both star in it. So, I'm acting in it. I wrote it. I directed it. I think that might be enough. That might
maybe so. You might be a little bit busy, just a little.
Who knows? Maybe if it comes to it and I need to write some music for it, I of course would. But
maybe like a theme song over the credits or something.
Something. I don't know. Maybe I might pull out my kazoo and just hum a tune or something. I don't know.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Little taps for the for the credits. Gothic version of taps.
It's gonna end with the theme from Sanford and Son. If it's real bad, it definitely will end with something like that, or like the Benny Hill theme, like. Hey, they're not going to demonetize your podcast because I sung those hum those tunes, are they?
Nah. I don't think the AI is quite that smart enough yet.
I don't want to get you in any trouble.
Nah, I'm not worried. I'm not scared. Well, thank you so much for being here. If people get excited about the book, how can they contact you? Are you on social media? Should they go to your website? How do you like them to get in touch?
I am all over social media. I have an Instagram. I have a Facebook business page. I don't have a Facebook personal page anymore, but I do have a Facebook, I guess, professional page is what they call it. I'm kind of, sort of, barely on TikTok, but I am on there. And I'm very, very active on YouTube. However, all my DMs are turned off so that I can focus on making all of this work. So anybody who wants to reach out, you got to go to my website, voltaire.net. There is a contact button there. And if you hit that contact button and send a message, there is a better than average chance that I'm going to see it. So that's the way to reach me. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And everyone, go grab your copy of Gothic Life, Essential Guide to Macabre Style. The cover is gorgeous. So if you are into the goth style, it is going to fit in beautifully with your new interior. And thanks again, Voltaire, for being here with us. My pleasure. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks for joining us on Booklights. Be sure to connect with us at www.readersentertainment.com for articles, blogs, videos, and podcasts that matter to readers.